What if you were incarnated into this life and the whole theme was communication? You would walk down a road and people would be talking about having healthy conversations. You would be going through your life experiencing people, communicating and sharing their ideas in an effortless way, and maybe you have the feeling like you cannot properly join in a conversation unless you have the facts, unless you know the right information, unless you are worthy enough when it comes to communicating your truth. That worthiness and that openness, that ability to verbalize your truth, the ideas in your mind, is really the lesson of Saturn in Gemini. I'm Everett Curdy, and in this video, I'm going to be breaking down what this placement in the natal chart is all about. But before I do, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel if you're interested in content that involves astrology and spirituality, and possibly other topics. So let's get into it. Now I'm going to talk about what the meaning of Saturn in Gemini means. If you have this placement in your natal birth chart, or if you're just interested to learn about this particular placement. So now I'm going to be discussing this placement. So what is Saturn, first of all? I just want to remind you that I have an in-depth video on Saturn and astrology that I did several weeks ago towards the beginning part of September. I'll be sure to link that down below, and I'll be sure to link the playlist that I have on Saturn through each of the 12 signs of the zodiac. So Saturn is a malefic energy. It's a malefic planet. Saturn presents you with a restriction, with an obstacle, not to limit or hurt you or cause you pain, harm, suffering, and deceit. But it is there to help you grow, to help you mature into who you were truly meant to be in this life. Saturn puts this blockage or this challenge there to see if you can rise above it, to see if you can put in the hard work to accomplish something out of it, to become a master of some kind, depending upon what trait or the traits of the sign that Saturn is in your natal birth chart. And also when it comes to the house area that Saturn rules in your birth chart. You know, if you have Saturn in the 4th house or 7th house. My Saturn is in the 7th house of relationship. So, Saturn also deals with boundaries, healthy boundaries. It deals with you being disciplined and you having the stamina to continue to work and continue to persist on the things that you need and want to do, and the goals that you set out for yourself, that your soul incarnated on this planet said, okay, well, I have these rules, I have these guidelines, I have these specific things and tasks that I want to accomplish, and these things that I want to experience, and this is the work, this is the karmic debt that you need to put in. And then Saturn gives rewards. That Saturn says that you don't deserve things, you earn things through hard work. It's very Saturnian. And the hard work that is involved with someone who has Saturn in Gemini is going to be of the intellectual mind. So, if you have Saturn in Gemini, maybe you grew up at a time when new ideas were getting spread around the table. You know, you could have a table in the evening or whatever with a bunch of people sharing ideas, just sharing ideas, bouncing around their different ideas, like a ping pong game, like a tennis match. I share an idea, and then I shoot the ball in a particular direction, and you share your idea back at me. So that is how a conversation works. You share your idea, and then you listen to the other person's idea. So new ideas were probably getting spread around, of new ways of doing things, of new technology, because Gemini rules over things like social media and technology, of new handy-dandy tools to use in your life, or whatever the new ideas and new information that was getting spread around. So there may be some difficulties with communicating, some challenges when it comes to speaking your truth, some difficulties with communicating your ideas, communicating and sharing the information that you've learned and that you've collected with your mind. I think that if you have Saturn in Gemini, you may be more tempted initially, inadvertently, to journal and write down those ideas or just study them and sharing them quietly within inside yourself. But the idea is for you to really find the self-empowerment and give yourself a big fat permission slip to share your ideas. So, you could have some challenges with communication. There could be learning difficulties. Maybe you were behind a grade in school. Maybe you struggle to keep up with the curriculum. Maybe you're not the most book smart person out there. Maybe learning information and certain fine motor skills or mental skills, there could be some delays with that. This also, Saturn and Gemini, Saturn restricts whatever it touches. So in Gemini, it deals with communication. So I wouldn't be surprised if there may be something going on with communication, such as stuttering, such as having a speech impediment. Now, you can't tell by listening to me, but let me tell you a story. I didn't have Saturn in Gemini, but I have a good amount of my planets. I have my descendant in Gemini, my Venus in Gemini, my Mars in Gemini, and my Black Moon Lilith in Gemini. Let me tell you a story. Are you hearing how clear my R's sound? Well, that wasn't always the case. Before April 16th or 18th of 2021, my speech was super inconsistent. And before, I want to say 2019, something, along those lines, when I was younger, my speech was it wasn't the best. My R's were not clear. When I would say the word like worst, it would be wost when I would be intending to say worst. So my R's were not clear. My R sounds were unclear, and I would say certain things and I would intend to say the R sound, but it would come out as the O sound. I also had some kind of difficulty with pronouncing my S's, and also making those sounds crisp and clear, and maybe my T sounds as well. Yeah, so I had some things going on with that. And then also, Saturn and Gemini is about being honest with yourself and being authentic with regards to, communicating and using your real voice. So let me tell you a story. When I thought about it, when I was in elementary school, I did change my voice when I was in school. I don't know why. I was young. It didn't really affect me or bother me, or I didn't go into analysis paralysis over it and have intrusive thoughts about it when I was in elementary school, but that's sort of something I did when I thought about it. I don't think that I did it all the time. And then as soon as I entered 6th grade, middle school, I stopped that completely and just spoke in my normal voice. But anyway, so with that said, there may be some difficulties with speaking and acting on your ideas. Um, speaking your mind, you may feel sort of an unworthy energy when it comes to speaking your mind. You may feel like you can't speak your mind just clearly and authentically as you want to. That you have to put a filter, that you have to censor your ideas, that you have to put a limitation, that you have to gain all the the intellectual data points and the information to be able to speak from your heart, speak from your mind what you want to communicate. And so you may um, be more on the shyer type. You may be very shy. It, there may be a sort of message that you grew up with that said, now you can't communicate what it is that you want to. So that may be something that you may have been sort of conditioned into believing. Who knows? Um, you really have to look at the aspects of what is going on in your natal birth chart, and also the synastry, which is the astrology of relationships between you and your Saturn placement with regards to the placements in the natal charts of your parents and siblings, to get a fuller picture and a more holistic understanding of you specifically as a person, as a soul living a human experience with Saturn and Gemini. There's more to just this placement that needs to be taken into account. There's the house that Saturn falls in your natal chart, there's the aspects that it makes to other planets, there's a bunch of different things. So, you may have a lot of great ideas, but can you actually manifest them? Can you apply your ideas? Can you act upon them? Can you verbalize them and make them conscious and put awareness to them? So, those are some things to think about. You may also struggle with indecision. It may be difficult for you to make a decision because you may have all of these different things over here and over there, and you may have all these different options in the information and the options and all the data and all the people and all these situations and what's going on over here, what's going on over there. It can be so overwhelming that your mind may be overwhelmed with many, many different ideas, that it may be hard to make sense of all that chaos. It may be difficult to put a limitation or a barrier or a structure around all of those ideas, around all of that information. And so, what you want to communicate, what you want to learn, the things that you want to speak, your ideas, another person's ideas of what you should do. All of these different things are great to consider. You want to open up to all the different options and all the different perspectives, but you also want to make a decision, or you also need to make a decision. It is for your highest good to take all that information and boil it down into a decision. So you may struggle with indecision, with getting so caught up in what are other people thinking, what's going on in your intellectual mind. All of it boils down to indecision. But you want to make a decision. Tuning into the polarity of Sagittarius, which is your intuition. It is Sagittarius is the archer. Think of having a sense of direction. You want to, because Gemini is the multiplicity. Gemini is all the different ideas out there, all of the different multiple dual sides of light, the light and the dark, this and that. It deals with the both and principle in spirituality. It deals with opening up to the different perspectives and the different sources of information, multiple sources of information, multiple people, multiple conversations. So you can be pretty darn adaptable with your Gemini energy there, which is a real strength of this placement. But Sagittarius is the archer. Sagittarius is the archer that is pointed in a particular direction. You have your intuition, you have your sort of point, your target where you're focused, and you have a goal. You've looked at all this information and you've come to a conclusion. You have your idea now, and you're moving in a particular direction. You're pursuing a particular goal. You're moving on a certain path. So, that making a decision, coming to a decision, is going to be important here. So can you, like a canary, because I have, I think it's a canary spirit from the Spirit Animal Oracle by Colette Baron Reed. One of the cards in that deck is the canary, which is about finding your voice. So can you find your voice with this placement? It is all about the willingness and the bravery and the courage to speak your ideas, to to really have a mind, to learn whatever you want to learn, to say whatever you want to say. So it's about implementing your ideas into something tangible, into something practical, into something that is, I have this idea and I am physically manifesting it, because Saturn rules over the physical manifestation, the bricks and mortar of what you have to build, the structure, the building that you are building, that you are constructing in your life. Saturn wants something tangible. It wants results. What does this mean? How is this valuable? Is this just abstract? Is it just a pipe dream? Is it just an idea in your mind? Or does this mean something? Is this valuable? How does this matter? How is this important? How is this good for the long term? It's very Saturn energy. So taking your ideas and inventing something, experimenting with something. You may have a new idea of inventing something else. And before there were lamps, there were just an idea of lamps. So you have so many reserves of ideas and visions for things that you want to create. But can you actually ground it down into reality and turn those things into physical things? Like, think of all the great people in history that had all these ideas for inventing the windows, the piano, the desk, the computer, all different forms of technology. But before those technologies were developed, there was the idea, first of all. So that becomes important. So don't think that your ideas are invaluable and that they don't matter, because they do. You are learning in this life that your ideas, yeah, they matter. Your ideas matter. And so, again, the difficulty with communicating your thoughts and finding words to things, to being, something that can really help is journaling, communication, talk therapy, whatever allows you to communicate your thoughts and articulate and to find the words to things. If you have Saturn and Gemini and you have a lot of air in your natal chart, well, you have a lot of universal support where you can then master the Saturn lessons. You can climb that mountain of, well, yes, now I have this energy and I have all these other planets in air to communicate my ideas, to be intellectual, to be free-spirited in the mind, to learn whatever I want to, all these kind of things. Or do you have a chart that where you don't have a lot of air? Gemini is an air sign. And air is very, very ethereal. It's very lofty. It's very flighty. It's very abstract. It's very free. It's liberated. So, what this means is that Can you articulate things? Can you look around at your, life and what's going on and find the words to things? Can you articulate your thoughts and feelings and ideas? That's the real conversation with this. So you may also be prone to analysis paralysis, analyzing things out of the wazoo, analyzing things from the logical mind in that perspective of where you're overwhelmed. And you cannot, again, boil it down to something. And you're overanalyzing something, you're looking at it from all the possible angles, and you are, because what you're doing when you're doing this analysis, if you're watching this video and you resonate with what I'm saying, as you're analyzing a lot, where you can say to yourself, I'm overanalyzing and I need to stop overthinking this, because you can get your mind into a state of what you could make you can take away your peace of mind through analyzing all the different angles, all the different possibilities of things. Stop over analyzing and just think about it with not overthinking about it. And yeah, so you can get too bogged down in the nitty-gritty. So being able to see the bigger picture of something in the larger vision while also seeing the details. This is super important, that those two, between the Gemini, which is the little details, the data, the communication with exactly what the person's saying and how they're saying it. And Sagittarius is the point, the spiritual meaning of this, the higher meaning, the more philosophical, big picture meaning of this. You may have a lack of self-confidence and lack of self-esteem if you have this placement. So you are here to make information realistic. So you can look around at all the different sources of information, and you have so much, there's so much information out there. What information is valuable and what information is not worth your time, is not worth your energy, is not worth your breath, is not worth your mental investment? That's a question. That is a question. So can you take all the different sources of information and break it down into something realistic? When I do videos, I take all multiple sources of information and I put it together into a product that is the videos that I make. That is this video that I am making right now. Determining which information is false, which information is real, what pieces of information are important and valid, and which pieces of information are not that. Those are all going to be super big things for you in this life. So, focusing on an idea and making it mean something. What does this mean to you, basically? How does this resonate with you? How does this land within you? So having an idea, a topic that you want to study, and actually being about it, and actually doing it, and actually manifesting the thing, because Saturn demands that you manifest it. So if you have this placement, you may find yourself surprised and really patting yourself on the back like, hey, I am super good at analyzing and collecting data and collecting information and working with anything that involves details, Excel spreadsheets, things like that. So you may have a talent for anything that involves researching, investigation, learning, anything that involves paying attention to details. You may find that you have a talent with that in this life. And so another thing here is networking. You can find so much value in conversation. You can learn so much through having conversations, through interacting with other people, through sharing your experience and receiving their experience, receiving their take on their own perspectives of what they have to say and how they view life. So, a big thing for you is finding a tribe that really understands you, finding people that get you on an intellectual level, finding a network of people to communicate with, finding friends, things that you can engage your mind in, things that you can do to keep your mind stimulated in this life. So there is a craving, a yearning within your soul for some kind of stimulation, whatever it may be, especially if it's intellectual stimulation. Intellectual stimulation is what I'm talking about here. So, finding people that you can reach across the aisle to, connect with, interact with, collaborate with, negotiate with, bounce ideas with, have conversations with, that you're listening to them, they're interacting with you, you're interacting with them. And are those conversations just superficial? Or do they mean something to you? Are they meaningful conversations? So before reading an article, before investing your mental energy into something, is it worth it? Is it worth doing? Is it worth investing in? Is it worth engaging my mind and mental energy in this way? So Saturn puts a lesson on whatever sign it transits through, and you were born under the transit of Saturn and Gemini. And so Saturn wants to make all that information mean something. So, you can take what I'm saying and you can test and measure it in your own life. And so communication, having people that you can connect with in your life, books that you can read, information that you can learn, all these things are going to be super important to you. Now, something that's super interesting about Saturn and Gemini is you can take your time and speak very, very deliberately and with intentionality, with speaking very intently on something. So you came here to master the mind. You're not just talking to talk. You're not just shooting the wind with your ideas. You have your ideas and you communicate them with intention, with purpose, with wanting to achieve a certain goal, with wanting to speak because the information is important and valuable and worth speaking. So, the other lesson with Saturn and Gemini is change. Can you be open to change, whatever that change may be? It could be changing your relationship, it could be changing your career, because part of life is change. Nothing is meant to stay the same. Gemini is a mutable sign, and it marks the transition. All mutable signs are transitional. They mark, so we're leaving one season and entering another season. So Gemini, the first half of Gemini season, the first, I want to say 15 days of the season, are spring. And then we're gearing further up into summer as we move further on to Gemini season. And we notice a transformation from May 21st in the Northern Hemisphere to June 20th, when the Sun is at the anaretic degree of Gemini and it moves on to Cancer, and then summer begins. So change. Being open to change. Being open to things being different, not staying the same. Because change is a part of life. And so having a structure, having something that you're sticking to and committing to, and having a routine, a certain direction, a certain goal that you have set your sights on to achieve, but also being flexible and just understanding that change, to, allow yourself to change your mind, change your job if it's not suiting you anymore, if it's not spiritually right for you, if it's not bringing you the happiness and fulfillment that you seek, if it's not cutting the mustard for you. So can you change that and allow yourself to do that? A topic, a mental focus, changing what you're learning about, changing your mental focus, and if you're no longer interested in a certain topic, in a certain, career goal, whatever. So you're also super intelligent. You have Saturn's a talent that you didn't know that you had, that you didn't know that you could tap into, but that requires some, some work, some cultivation, because Saturn is cultivation. So you're super intelligent, and you probably love, and you're probably super into mind games, engaging your mind. So you have all this abundance of knowledge to share. And Saturn asks you, are you willing to share that knowledge? Are you willing to share that information? So, are you very intellectual and you are very communicative and you do all those Gemini things? Or did you metaphorically, figuratively, cut off your voice, cut off your logical side? Like, oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, speaking my truth and ideas, like, my ideas don't matter. My ideas aren't valid. It's not worth speaking my ideas. It's not worth speaking my ideas, or, I'm not, like, inadequacy, like, I don't have the right information, or I am not the right person to communicate this, or, it's just not worth it to speak my ideas, or I just don't have the answers. So you may also suffer from uncertainty, something to uncertainty with information out there, or uncertainty with just people and how they go about their lives, and maybe it could be uncertainty when it comes to the path that you want to go down in your life, not having, again, certain, clear, an objective direction of where you're going. You may also be suffer from self-doubt as well. Maybe unfocused or flighty, scattered over here, over there, flighty. So that's something that I also discussed, because that's one of the other downsides of Gemini, is they can, start reading this book and then start reading that book, and they can move in many, like 1,000 different directions at once. So be sure that you're not spreading yourself out too thin. So you have a true love of learning. Your love of learning is super strong. And it is important to continually engage your mind, continually learn throughout your life new information. Gemini is new information, new topics, new, ventures. So you're also very inquisitive. As Saturn and Gemini, you can really be very inquisitive, asking questions, and do not deny the part of yourself that just wants to learn, that just wants to ask questions, that just wants to be free as a butterfly, flying, flitting from flower to flower. Do not cut off that part of yourself that has so much to share. Allow yourself to share that information, is what I'm saying. Allowing yourself to ask questions and seek answers, and to free up your mind and be in beginner's mind. Be an innocent child who just genuinely wants to learn new things, just for the sake of learning new things in your life. Another part of Gemini is maybe having a dual kind of personality where, again, maybe it's an uncertainty of who you are. You don't know who you are. So you may show off one part of yourself to certain people and another part of yourself to other people. So your personality may not be just black and white, cut and dry, but it may be dual. So that's an interesting little detail. So you're also laughing, opening up your throat chakra is going to be super important. So opening that up. So you have a great wit, a great humor system, great, love of laughing and conversation. So anything that you can do to open up this throat chakra, speaking, maybe it's turning on an audio recording, the voice recording on your phone just to hear yourself speak, just to communicate your ideas and get comfortable with your own voice, get comfortable with sharing your ideas. That's going to be a really, really huge thing, is becoming comfortable with hearing your own voice and becoming just, like I am now, comfortable in your own skin and comfortable speaking and, sharing information, like maybe starting a YouTube channel or, starting a blog, anything where you can truly and authentically express your voice is going to be super duper important for you. And it's going to be a good thing for you, at least from my standpoint. So becoming unafraid to, share your truth again. So very imaginative. You can also tap into an imaginative, creative side in you. So anything that involves being creative when it comes to being intellectual, being intellectually creative is going to be a huge thing for anyone with displacement. So you learn through your environment, you learn from the world around you, you learn through the conversations that you have with other people. So opening up to the world around you, opening up to your small community, and the information that you can gather in your environment is going to be huge also. Certain career paths that really make sense for you are going to be being a teacher, where you're sharing information, where you're teaching information, you are sharing what you already know and you're asking questions, because a very good teacher is one who asks questions and plants the seed of a thought in somebody else. And then they can do their own research and they can study that information on their own and draw their own conclusions to that information. So you thrive as you have the potential basically to thrive as a teacher, a writer, a singer, or any career where you can use your intellect and you can sharpen and hone in on your craft of your mind, of your mental prowess, of your intellectual capacity, of your intellectual mind. Anything that you can do to strengthen your mind, your communication is going to be good. You're also great at organizing things, putting things into order too. Now, a couple of other downsides is you can be too intellectual, too rational, getting caught up in what is rational and logical. That you're losing sight of what is genuinely a feeling, what is genuinely in your heart, what you feel. So Gemini is a very detached sign. Air is the element of detachment. Air is like rising above your emotions, not feeling. It deals with the intellect, the realm of ideas and theory, and all those kind of things like that. Gemini, another downside of Gemini is superficiality and being pretty shallow. Not wanting to dig too deep into things like air and fire signs, like, that's too heavy. I don't want to dig into that. Like, I have someone that I know who's who's an extended family member of mine, where I don't feel like she really wants to dig too deep into, spiritual topics, astrology, and those kind of things. Like, it's too heavy, it's too, and that's where at this point in my life, when astrology and spirituality are what I am, mainly interested in, that can be, we I think are coming to the place of having our differences in that regard, where I want to go deep, she doesn't want to go that deep, at least from my, understanding and interpretation of our interactions. But anyway, there may be some indifference that you may just happen to possess when it comes to the realm of feelings. So balancing out the intellectual mind, the intellect, and the feeling mind, or feeling mind. That's the oxymoron there. And the feeling body and the emotions. So making sure that those things are balanced is going to be something that you do want to keep in your back pocket. So, indifference to other people's situations, or just not wanting to, be super, emotional, feely, so it's important to have that care and have that compassion and have that feeling, emotional understanding and sympathy for, when it comes to relating to others and also yourself on an emotional level. So, it's important also to, yes, strengthen your rational, logical side, but not letting that rule the roost and getting so caught up in that, not wanting to, rationalize your feeling, rationalize your intuition, because that can be a, downside, is that you want to find a rational, logical explanation to your feeling, to your instincts. And it's important to allow your instincts and your emotions a seat at the table to balance those out. And so maybe you can recreate things from what you feel doesn't work in your life, and you can be the inventor. You can have this great idea and manifest it, be the inventor, someone who's original, someone who has this grand new idea of something totally new. So that's another strength and skill set that you can possess. And it's also important to not always seek external validation when it comes to your ideas. Is this right? Is this valid? Is this accurate? Is this worth implementing? Like, all of those ways that we seek external validation for our ideas. Can you just validate yourself and come to a place within yourself where you are giving yourself permission to implement these ideas and speak those ideas without needing external validation? So that also deals with a strong sense of power, inner power, and also a strong sense of self-worth that needs to be developed if you have this placement. So, and you don't have to have all the answers. That's another thing. You don't have to have all the answers. So can you be humble and curious to learn new things? To say, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. So I'm going to be open-minded to learn that new information, to learn what I need and want to ask questions, to get help, to to do the Gemini thing where you're just receptive and you're just unbiased and just open and just curious to learn the new perspective, learn the new information. So humility and curiosity are going to be two things that are going to make you very, very strong in this life. So stop pretending like you know the answers when you really don't. And ask questions, get help, get the information that you want or need. And you will fare very well in this life. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, this message, this long, in-depth message, this deep contemplation on Saturn and Gemini. If you have this placement in your natal chart, I really hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you found some value and some of your own meaning out of this information that I provided. I would highly encourage you to share it with anyone that you think would enjoy and find meaning from this information. Like this video so that the YouTube algorithm can put it out and disperse it to as many people as possible. Subscribe to my channel once again, and take care.